Welcome to the Girl Take No podcast. I am your host, Shaunie Sanders, and today we're having a conversation all about money. So come on, boss babes, you gotta get your money together. And our guest today is Patti Handy. She is a financial coach, she is an author, and she is empowering divorced, single, and widow women to have financial confidence, which is something we all need. Patti, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shaunie. It's so great to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Because sometimes, Patti, I can mess up an intro. Okay, I did my best.
You did a little fumble. You did awesome. I did my best.
A+. I just like to tell people that. Let them know.
A+.
I just like to tell people. Okay, so before we get into any conversations, give me the story behind the brand. What inspired you to become a financial coach?
The seed was planted many years ago when I went through my divorce. I've been divorced now over 20 years, and I had a moment. It was a very strange, very odd moment. I remember, like, literally probably a week or two after my divorce, and I was laying in a fetal position, just sobbing with, oh my gosh, where do I go? What do I do? Just the overwhelm. And I had my son is 18 months old at the time. So I had him under my wings, and I was laying there, and I had this strange download. I call it God whispering in my ears, just saying, "You're going to be okay. You have a handle, and you understand how to manage your money. You're going to be fine." And I thought, well, that was very strange, because I wasn't even thinking about the financial piece. I was just like emotionally distraught. But that weird download happened, and then a couple months later, probably actually more than a couple months, probably more like 6 months later, I had this epiphany that I wanted to do something to take this experience of divorce and what I've went through and help other women, because I know a lot of women aren't empowered with financial smarts to no fault of anybody. It just wasn't taught at home and not in schools. And so, the journey was I had to make a living for my son. I was in corporate America before I had him, and corporate banking, I should say. And I went into the mortgage lending world. I was a mortgage advisor for many, many years, and then I transitioned to a financial advisor, and I did that for a bit. Really enjoyed both roles, but in both of those roles, I had many, many conversations with women, mostly who were divorced or widowed or single, and just overwhelmed, fearful, embarrassed. The same theme was coming up over and over again. And, as a financial advisor, my firm had minimums as far as how much we needed to have the portfolio size to work with them. And a lot of the ladies I spoke to didn't have that. Anyways, kind of fast forward to today, I decided to take that leap of faith, jump from being a financial advisor, go into coaching, and specifically working with women who are divorced, widowed, and single, it's more of a, life coaching, financial coaching, teaching, a lot of education, but it's a lot of coaching as well. So.
Yeah. Did you always think you'd be an entrepreneur, Patti, or did you it just kind of like naturally happened?
You know what? I've always loved being an entrepreneur. My first little stint was when I was like 9 years old. We lived up in the hills, far away from everybody. And I love candy. And I figured, well, my neighbors would like candy too. So I started a little candy stand at 9 years old.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I took my money and went down to the store where my mom went, of course, and I would buy candy bars and had a little stuff in my garage freezer. And I would sell candy to the neighbors, and then I graduated to like ice cream bars, and it was just, that was the start of my entrepreneurial little spirit. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Ice cream bars. That's big.
Yeah.
You got to keep those frozen.
Yeah. Those were in the freezer outside in the garage. We had a garage freezer. And so I stashed my little pile there.
Oh, that is so awesome. Let's talk about when you took that leap. Was it scary to take that lead? Because, basically, a lot of us would say, hey, you were in a pretty good position as a financial advisor, right? Was it scary for you to say, okay, I'm going to do this on my own. I see a need and I'm going to do this on my own. Was it?
Yeah. It's still scary. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I left a job with, obviously an income and, a good income and benefits and a 401k and all those bells and whistles to nothing, so I had to go out and get my own medical insurance so it definitely is a leap of faith. But I'm at the stage in my life where I look back and I thought, the fear of regret of not doing this was greater than the fear of the comfort of that position. I didn't want to look
Yeah.
back, 80, 90 years old and go, oh, what if I just done that? What if I had imagined what the world would be like if I was able to help 100 women or 1,000 women or 10,000 women, and then they all helped 110,000, and just what a ripple effect that would have on the world, and then their kids, and how that would just, again, ripple out to the world. And
Yeah.
I just got goosebumps, when I would think about that. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I'm doing it. So
That's such awesome, because it's all about the service, the act of service. You know what I mean? It's like you said, just that ripple effect, because you educate all these women on money, educate them on how to have that financial freedom and how to just have a better relationship with money, which I think we all need to understand. And that's powerful, because not a lot of people have that type of ability. I think people I talk to in my circle, the majority of us really need to improve our relationship with money. We're just now beginning to think about, okay, how do we build a business? Do we do a holding company? Just different things in order to have a better relationship. How do we invest it? What we do? How do we bring it in?
yeah, it definitely, it's one of those conversations that most people don't like to talk about, and
Yep.
it's uncomfortable, and people are embarrassed, and they have shame around it, so they don't even discuss it. And there's no shame. There's no, I want to remove that word from the vocabulary, because it's no different than me not knowing French. I didn't learn French in school. We didn't speak French at home. So why would I know French?
Yep.
Right. So, I'm not embarrassed. I don't speak French. I never learned it. So, the actual mechanics of money are actually very simple. They truly are. It's just that people look at this, and the financial world makes it so complicated, and it doesn't need to be.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think we're so ashamed of talking about money? You know what I mean? It makes us look as, I guess it makes us feel like we didn't make good decisions in our life, if we don't have it. I mean, I don't know what that is. Why do we?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of deep rooted issues to that. That's a big question. A lot of it is around society. There is this, let's impress, the neighbors, and let's outdo the Joneses, and let's compete in that arena. And when you get to a place where you don't give a crap what your neighbors think, you just want to live a good life, and you want to live, like you said, a life of service, and be able to take care of your family, and donate where you can, and all of that stuff that life's about, then you really are in a place of comfort and confident, and being in that power place. It's not about buying a bigger home or a fancier car, and I'm not saying nothing's wrong with that. I mean, that's lovely, but not at the expense of your retirement being compromised, or just the lifestyle. But I think a lot of that, back to your question, is society. I think it is just a conversation that, because we're not confident in it and we're not comfortable with it, it's hard to talk about. It just makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that whole thing of keeping the Joneses, I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's like now, I don't know, I guess back then it was saw as success if you're just able to own a moderate home and have the white picket fence, you know what I mean, and just something of your own. Where today it's like, oh no, you got to have the big house, the big cars, you got to take the big vacations, because it's so much what we see on social media, and that's kind of like how we now are gauging if we're successful or not, and we really shouldn't be.
Oh, absolutely, 100% no. And we just need to get to that point where, and I think that's where we as human beings, and we're all on this journey. I'm not like I have, arrived. Yeah. We're all on this journey. But I think that when we're at that place where we are completely indifferent to what other people think of the car we drive, the house we live in, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's no different than what color socks I'm wearing. It's just so indifferent. Then we've come to a place of that peace. And to me, life is about making memories and having experiences. Yeah. And if you want to make money because you want to take your family on a 1-month trip to Italy, then God bless you. That's a beautiful thing. If it's just to feed the ego, to, like I said, impress somebody else, then it's time to do some reflection and to really understand what that's coming from.
Yeah, it is. What has the journey been like for you since you've been working in your own business? Has it been like I know business have ebbs and flows. You know, we have some good days, you have some days where you're like, oh, it wasn't the best, but I'm still doing it. How has it been for you?
Yeah, it's just what you said, ebbs and flows. You know, there are some days where I'm like, oh dear Lord, did I do the right thing? Should I have really done what I did? And then I wake up, I'm like, no, this is great. This is awesome. I know it's going to work.
Yeah.
This feels good. This feels in alignment with me. I think the culmination of what I've gone through in my life between my divorce and all the experience I've had in work with having these conversations has brought me to this point. And I truly believe, you know, God's been poking me all these years and finally just said, okay, enough, woman, let's do this.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, if God is leading you, then you can't go wrong. That's how I feel about
exactly.
it.
Exactly. Me, yeah, I'm on, yes.
You know, let me ask you this. So back in the day, we know how there was a lot more housewives, right? And a lot of them didn't work and they depend on the husband. So if a divorce was to happen, a lot of them was like almost left with nothing. You know what I mean? And almost like no skills to work either, right? Today, it's different. So when you look at women who are divorced or women who are single and widowed, are they kind of like in the same similar situation where they're like, I don't really know what to do. I don't have the financial stability, especially if they were married and they're divorced now. I don't have that financial stability because he was paying half of everything. And now here I am, have to manage this myself. What do I do now? Do you get a lot of women like that?
There certainly are a lot of women who were homemakers who stayed at home to raise a kid, so didn't have the track record of an income, which means their Social Security is affected. And so it sort of ripples, and then they just let the husbands manage the funds because they just did a better job, or so they thought. And they just, you know, it was like, they didn't think about it. And especially with widowed women whose husband took care of it, and suddenly the husband has passed unexpectedly. And we've seen that for sure. And it's the, you know, the trauma and the grief and the emotions that they're trying to get through. And the financial piece is the last, you know, piece that they're thinking of. They're just like distraught over losing their husband that they loved. And the financial piece has to be addressed for sure. But you've got to be really careful that you make wise decisions in those moments, because sometimes when you're in that state, you don't make the best decisions. You've got to just kind of pull back and wait until you're kind of above water. But yes, a lot of times the men would take care of the funds. I've run across, you know, ladies who didn't even know where they had assets, what they had. They just, you know, knew that the husband was taking care of it, never really concerned themselves with it. And that's dangerous, even for, you know, happily married couples, because like you said, you know, it's like somebody passes unexpectedly, husband or wife. If one or the other did the bills, you know, in my marriage, I took care of the bills. My ex-husband didn't know squat about investing or where things were. And if I had passed, he would have been, you know, in a world of hurt. So, I definitely think that those conversations have to happen.
Yeah, I think so too. But like you said, it's such a hard conversation to have. But as married couples, it should be financial should be something we talk about. It should be a conversation we talk about, you know, we even started talking about burial insurance. You know what I mean? Because we don't think about, when you're like living, you don't think about dying, right? And you don't think about planning for that, you know. And I had this conversation the other day with some of my friends where I talked about, I said, you know, our parents really didn't, when they passed, they kind of like passed down their debt versus their assets. And it's like, you know, I want to be a different type of parent where I'm able to actually pass down, build generational wealth, where I'm not just leaving behind my debt to my children, but I'm actually leaving behind something. How do a person get on that path? Like, what are some of the steps you tell a person to get on that path, to start building and having a better relationship with money?
Yeah, I'll answer that question, but I'm going to make a comment on the other point about leaving your kids debt versus assets. There was a study done, and it's probably a year now since I remember looking at the statistics, but the number one thing when they did this huge survey with, you know, individuals who were very, very old and lived a full, long life, the number one thing that they wanted to pass down to their kids, and it was their cores and values, rated like 73 or 75%, versus assets, which only rated like 30 or 35%. So the need to pass down core values, and character traits was far more important than here's a bucket of money and have fun with it. So I found
Thanks, Dad.
I found that to be very I was actually surprised. I think it was lovely. I love to hear that, but I was surprised. I thought passing on assets would have ranked a little bit higher. But to your question, what we're doing today is kind of the start. It's that pebble in the pond where you just drop it, and that we talked about earlier, the ripple effect. So have the conversations, do the education, reach out to people, get help, and that's also what's fueling me to do this, because I know that when I teach these ladies this information, they can teach their kids. And they can, even if they're adult kids who are coming out of college and they're coming out with school loans and credit card debt and whatnot.
That's important.
Yeah, and if they can get empowered, they're going to be in such a better state than we were, when we were in college many years ago. So, I think that is the start. Having those conversations, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. If you're uncomfortable talking about money, fine, be uncomfortable, but do it anyways. Do the research, talk to people. Read the books. Online is very noisy, and online doesn't necessarily have all the accurate information, so be careful what you get online. But reach out to somebody that you trust, like maybe a referral from a friend that you've worked with. But start taking inspired action and start learning.
Yeah, and the learning piece is so important, because when I think about my mom come from a generation of, all they knew is that if you got $1, you need to save 50 cents, right? They didn't necessarily invest. They just knew I had to save money for a rainy day. I had to save money for the kids, save money. But they never taught us about credit cards. They never taught us about credit. They never talked about debt. And it's simply because I'm like, I don't blame my mom, because she didn't know. And because I remember in college, I don't know if you remember this, colleges, they used to the credit card companies would come on campus with their tables and recruit us. Hey, you can get this credit card for $5,000, no money. You got it for free. They make you think it's free money. And that was the beginning of my generation. That was the beginning of our credit card debt, because we thought it was free. I didn't know I had to really pay it back at the end of the month, or when I put something on it. I thought it was just, didn't even know anything about interest rates. None whatsoever. So education is so important, as you said today, like you said, for the women that you help and be able to educate them, and then they educate their children, because I really wish my mom would be able to do it for me, because I would have made different decisions today.
That is so huge. And I believe to date, those credit card companies are no longer allowed on campus.
Thank God.
For that reason. Yeah. And oftentimes, and I've seen this even, with individuals who are older than college age, where they look at their credit card statement and they just pay the minimum, thinking that that's okay, and they don't realize how it compounds and how that interest rate is compounding, and it'll take you a very long time to get out from underneath that at these 20-25% interest rate. So paying the minimum doesn't make a dent, and that education and understanding how that works and those calculations, I think if that information was taught in schools and in college, none of those companies would have had students that said, sure, let me have a card. They'll say, oh, heck no.
Exactly. Exactly. I think it should be taught in school, where they talk about credit, they talk about debt, they talk about interest rates, because we really need to start educating kids on real world things. Not everybody uses algebra in the real world. Not to say we shouldn't learn it, but I don't use it every day. You know what I mean? But the real things that we use when it comes to credit, finance, being able to, manage your money. I remember people had to tell us just how to manage a check, how to balance. Remember we had to balance checkbooks? It's like, now I don't even get checks at all, because I feel like they're a hassle. But we've come so far when it comes to information that is out there to help manage money. But what do you see as some of the biggest struggles with women when it comes to their financial state or status?
It's varied. I think that there's a lot of because they aren't comfortable with it. There's obviously a huge amount of fear, and it's the paralysis by analysis situation, where there's just the deer in the headlights. I don't even know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything, and I'll figure it out eventually. And then that's when you get into trouble, right? That's when things become really messy. They don't know where to start. It's like, what do I even begin with? Do I focus on getting out of debt? Do I focus on getting an emergency fund? How do I invest? What's a mutual fund? What's an ETF? What's the difference between the two? What do I, there's so many things that people are being fed. And I think a lot of the financial world is made to seem complicated. And so my focus is simple, simple, simple. Let's just break this down into little itty bitty bite-sized pieces. And once it's all broken down and once it's understood what for example, a mutual fund is versus an ETF and what the difference is, it's like, oh, okay, that's easy. I get that now. And I had actually conversation with a gal when I was in the financial advisory role. She had come in the office and she was newly divorced, extremely emotional. Most of the meeting she was just, very emotional and in tears. And her husband took care of everything. She didn't have a clue about anything investment-wise. And I was explaining to her, like the investments that we're going to be putting with her portfolio. And she was just looking at me and she's like, I don't understand what you're saying. And I'm like, okay. So I closed my computer. I looked at her and I said, all right, let's go through. We're walking into my favorite store, which is See's Candy. And we go to the back of the See's Candy store and we get a 2-pound box of nuts and chews. And the nuts and chews are a combination of different pieces of candy, right? Some have nuts, some have caramel, some have this or that, whatever. But within this box, you've got a lot of different flavors. Well, a mutual fund is kind of like that. A mutual fund is a box where there's all these different companies inside the box of chocolates. And that's what a mutual fund is. It's just a bunch of different companies together. And she's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So I wasn't trying to like make it silly. I was just trying to simplify it and make it relatable. And then later we were talking about a mutual fund. She goes, oh, like the box of chocolate. I go, yeah, exactly. So her whole demeanor changed because
I get it now too.
She got it. Yeah. It was like, okay, that makes sense. And again, we complicate it to sound important or we sound like, whatever. And we just need to make this so simple. And I've also told individuals, I said, if someone's trying to sell you a product and you don't understand it, where you can turn around and teach it to a 4th grader, then you should not be investing in it because you don't really fully understand it. And if you fully don't understand a particular product, a lot of these annuities and insurance products, they have a lot of moving parts. Now they're not bad or good, but if you don't understand them, you need to just wait until you do. So
let me ask you this. Do you find that a lot of people don't understand their 401ks? And I think the reason why I asked is that I think even I did for a while, was like, I feel like a 401k with your company is something I'm gonna do the max and I'm just gonna leave it alone. I'm not even gonna think about it. Like I'm not checking it. I'm not seeing what's going on with it. I don't know if it's going up or down. I just know it's there and I don't have to think about it. Do you think do we need to start taking more of an active role in looking at our 401k, paying attention to what's going on in the market?
Absolutely need to. I mean, no one cares more about your money than you do. And so,
because I don't think we do right now.
Yeah, no, you absolutely have to. Now, within 401ks, typically there's less options to invest in. There's less choices of funds versus if you were to go to like a Fidelity where there's tens of thousands of different funds. A mutual fund has a very small select number of funds. And a lot of times they'll put you into a target date fund, meaning that if you're going to retire in, 2060, you invest in a target date fund 2060 and it's already allocated for you and they do the rebalancing and they take care of it all. And that's all great. Target date funds are wonderful for that. But you absolutely should see what's going on. You should look at your statements, quarterly or a couple times a year. Yeah. Don't look at it daily. That's too much. But keep an eye on it and know when the market goes down. That's normal. The market's going to be volatile. This is a long-term game, and you don't play the ebbs and flows and jump out because you're panicked because the market's down. That's like the worst thing you can do. But yes, you should absolutely do 401k. And I think a lot of these 401k companies, they do offer some education to the company. So if a company has a 401k, ask if you can have their rep come in and do a little, half-hour discussion about your choices and your options and why you should be doing this 401k.
You're right though. I think if they could just make it simple, because they come in and they kind of really do give you all the financial jargon, and you're just like, I really don't know what any of this means. But when you're able to make it simple, just like I said, a mutual fund is like a box of chocolates. All these different people, all these different companies are in it. It's like, oh, that's what that is. Even I was like, oh, okay. I think I understand that better now, just by the simple way that you explained it. And if we can all get people to explain it the way you just did, I think we all can understand our money better and how to manage it and how to build it and how to grow it.
And it won't be this fearful, overwhelming, black hole of, oh my gosh, I don't even want to open that can. Once you understand it, and that's what I was saying earlier, the mechanics of money are really generally pretty simple. And once you learn it and you understand it, it's not this mystery anymore. The bigger piece of I think the money is our relationship with money and our mindset around money. That's the foundation that can make or break our experience with money.
How do you get a money mindset? Like, how do you get that?
Oh, that's a lot.
Because I need it.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack. That's that's a whole other conversation, Shaunie. That's a 2-hour podcast on a different day. At the end of
give me a synopsis.
Okay, so I'll give you a very high level. So I want you to imagine an iceberg, okay, in the ocean. So the top where you can see the actual iceberg is your conscious mind. Okay, underneath the water is the bigger piece of the iceberg. That's where the major size of the iceberg lays, and that's your subconscious, right? So our subconscious actually dictates 95% of our external reality. So our little subconscious is playing these tape recorders in our brain that we absorbed and learned when we were from being born to about 8 years old. And we heard different things. We heard messages from our parents, our grandparents, our aunts, uncles, whoever, teachers. And we heard things like, money doesn't grow on trees. What do you think? We're rich, and rich people are greedy, and all these different things. So we either grew up in a household that was scarcity mindset or abundant mindset. And so that is what we have going on in our subconscious mind and going on in the background. So our decisions that we make consciously are mainly focused on the result of what we're thinking subconsciously, and to unlearn that and to change that, that's a big process, and it's a lifelong process. It doesn't just happen overnight. It isn't about just sitting and thinking I am wealthy, I am wealthy, I am wealthy. That doesn't work. So like I said, that's a very big conversation, but that's a very high level response.
Yeah, I think a lot of us live in that scarcity mindset, which is why when we get something, we always try to hold on to it. You know what I mean? Versus and investing it is like, I don't know if I'm going to do that. I rather, because like I said, my mom is like, no, you work, you save, work, you save. You know what I mean? And you don't spend that money for nothing. And so I grew up thinking, oh man, if I don't have a savings, then I'm not doing well in life. And so and then if I'm not doing well, then I'm feeling bad about myself. Now I feel, I don't feel very confident because I'm too embarrassed to tell people, oh, I don't have a savings, because my mom has taught me, like, you need to have a savings, you need to have a savings, you need to have a savings. And so you're right, being able to get out of that scarcity mindset is huge, because I know a lot of my friends, including myself, that live that way.
So, I'll respond to that in a way to kind of get you thinking and our audience thinking. Having that savings and having that cash in the bank is very important. You absolutely need an emergency fund to fall back on to deal with whatever's unexpected in life. And we all know that unexpected stuff happens, right? So having that cash in the bank is good. But depending upon the other factors in your life, and this is going to go a little bit kind of out there, your cash flow, what's coming in, what's going out, how old you are, your risk tolerance, all these other factors will determine what you put in the market and how much you put in the market. And you have to have some in the market. If you're, you seem young, right? So you're not 70, right? So, you're not ready to retire. You have time before you need those monies. So if you are in a situation where you have funds that you won't need for 7 to 10 years or more, that should be invested in the market. And the reason why is the money that you have in your savings account isn't keeping up with inflation. Today inflation is, well, it was, 8 or 9% a few months ago. But typically it's 4, 5, 6%, right? Right now, I think it's around 6, but this is, it's a fluid number. And if you've got your money sitting in the bank earning 2% and inflation is 6%, well, guess what? You're underwater. You're losing money to inflation. So the purchasing power of your money isn't going as far as you think it is. So that loaf of bread that was, once $1 is now $2, then your dollar in the bank doesn't, what I'm saying? It doesn't go as far. So you have to have different buckets. You've got to have the cash bucket, because cash is king or cash is queen. You've got to have the money in the market. So in index funds and different ways to invest there. And then you have investments in maybe the fixed income market, which is the bonds, which are the safer assets. And then if you're going to buy a home or if you need it for a wedding or all those, again, this is very personal and there's so many moving parts to it, but you've got to look at your entire financial picture to determine how am I going to allocate and diversify my money. But putting all of your money in the bank is actually working against you for that inflation purpose.
That's something to think about. What are your thoughts on, because I've been hearing a lot of people talking about trusts and putting money in a trust for kids or put money in a trust because they said it's not taxable and all this stuff. What are your thoughts around that?
When I hear the word trust, I think of a living trust where you're putting your assets in a living trust, one to avoid probate and one to make sure that your wishes are carried out. So if you want your assets to go in a certain direction, then you want to make sure that's all written out and everyone knows about it. And within the living trust falls the medical directive. So if something happens to you, who has the right to make a decision on, how and what to do with you? If you're in a coma and there's a decision to be made on what to do, who has that right to make that decision? You've got to make sure that that's written down somewhere. So that living trust, people look at, I don't have an estate plan. I don't have a big enough estate. The size of your estate doesn't matter. It's really what you want and where you want your funds to go as far as the living trust goes. Now, the other comment that you're making about the trust, you want to reach out to an attorney or a CPA to get into the nuances and the tax consequences of how to put your funds into trust. And that's typically more for those individuals who have more assets and that are trying to be creative. But I think in your context, more of just having a living trust, having an estate plan, that's important for everybody, regardless of your portfolio size.
Okay. Yeah, because I heard people talk about that, and I heard people talk a lot about insurance. It's just, what is this insurance that you can invest in, that you can take money from?
Yeah, see, so there's one of those things where
a lot of people have been talking about that lately.
If you listen to Susie Orman at all, she'll tell you to run like the wind from those products. And I'm kind of on board with that. So a universal life, a whole life, there's different kinds of insurance policies, and they all incorporate a combination of some life coverage and then of course some investing piece. But if you can't explain it to a fourth grader, then you shouldn't be investing in it, right?
Exactly.
So
I don't know nothing about it.
Yeah, the simplicity is if you have children, you have a family, you have people that need your need funds if you were to pass, a term life insurance, a simple term life insurance is the least expensive way to go, where I'm going to have $1 million term policy. It's this much per month. And it's far less expensive than a whole life or universal life. But there's no investing side to it. It's just a simple insurance policy. If it's a 10-year policy or 20-year policy and you don't die in that 10 and 20 years, well, yay, good for you. But all those premiums are gone, right? You've just paid like anything else. You pay home insurance, you pay car insurance. If you never get in an accident or your house doesn't ever burn down, it is what it is. That's what insurance is. Yeah. But the investment side, if you were to look at just putting those assets that would have been a more expensive premium, you would be, and you put that into the market in your own investing, then that's the way to do it. Really, that's my recommendation. I'll just say that. Keep the piece of the term life insurance separate. Invest in the market and index funds. because the costs of those universal life and those whole life, there's hidden fees, there's different things that are in there where it's costing you more in the long run. They make sense for some people. I'm not saying they're horrible product, but again, you've got to completely understand those before it makes any sense for you.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? Because I've been watching the news lately, and everybody's talking about our debt as a country, I guess, and what's going to happen if we default on that, and what happens to retirement funds, and I guess the market itself. So, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, that's a good question. That could be another conversation as well. I think overall, yes. I mean, we've been down this road before, and we've seen the market volatile. I mean, since the inception of the market, we've seen the Great Depression. We've seen different times in the markets where 9/11. We've had different times in our history where we've had some very worldwide issues. And at the end of the day, the stock market is the health of the companies that run this world, right? And if the health of the companies are overall healthy, then overall we're going to be okay in time. The debt ceiling is a concern. How it's going to affect Social Security and how it's going to affect other pieces. It's hard to say. I don't really know the answer to that question. But I think we've got to just sort of step back and keep that big picture in mind and know that we have control over our life and our world and how we manage our money, and that's what we should focus on. If we get caught up in the big world pictures, now I'm not saying put your head in the sand by any stretch. You've got to be aware of what's happening and how it impacts you. But people get very excited and anxious and nervous, and they have no control over that piece of it. So I say, step back, control what you can control, and try to be aware of what's happening in the market. But sometimes watching the news can work against you.
Oh yeah, it can scare you to death. It really can. Make you feel like, okay, I got to stop spending everything right now because I don't know what's about to happen. So
definitely be mindful of what's happening. I'm not again saying that we should just ignore it, but living in that constant fear and living in that anxiety is just going to create more fear, more anxiety, and then we're going to be making poor decisions. Like if the market does tank, the fear is like, oh my gosh, sell everything, I want to get out and go to cash. That's not a good thing. That's like selling when everything in the market is down. Like that's like the absolute worst thing you can do. So a lot of that behavioral finance is a big piece of being mindful of your money, for sure.
Yeah. What are some of the mistakes you see most women making when it comes to their money, maybe investments? Like, do women come to you, with the women that you coach, do they already have the assets? They just need to figure out where to put them and understand where they are? Or do they come to you and say, hey, I don't know what to do with anything. I'm getting a check, I'm getting some little money here, and I need to know how to make it grow for me?
And yes, all of what you said. So it just runs the gamut. I mean, certainly there are some that have sizable portfolios, and they have no idea what to do. And at that point, depending upon the other moving parts in their world, it might make sense to work with a financial planner. And a lot of times I will refer out to a financial advisor and say, okay, here's why you should consider using one, because there's a lot of tax consequences involved and there's a lot of moving parts. And I know that she won't implement these things on her own or rebalance her portfolio when it's necessary. And financial advisors are certainly a very valuable resource, no question. So I don't replace a financial advisor. I work with financial advisors. I'm a complement to them. In fact, I work with financial advisors because I do what they don't do and vice versa. I don't manage assets. I don't take their monies and tell them what to do, like how to invest it. But to your point, we start at the beginning. It's a roadmap. We start at, okay, where are you at today? What's coming in? What's going out? What do you need every month to really pay your bills? What's coming in net every month? Where's the gap? How do we clean up the gap if there is one? If there's positive cash flow, then let's look at what we can do with that. If there's debts, we need to address that. So again, it's very personal, and we dive deep into those situations, and we walk through what all that looks like. I mean, if there's credit cleanup to be done, I help with that.
Yeah.
Because after divorce, a lot of times those credit cards are closed, and so there's a hit to your credit sometimes. So,
Yeah.
and then if you want to buy a house or refinance, I help with that. It's just, there's so many moving parts and there's so many individual circumstances, but overall it's, let's start where we're going and let's start where we are and look where we're going, and then fill in that gap.
Do you advise them to, hey, let's stay away from credit cards at this moment and try to focus on building what you have and managing that well? Like, what if someone comes and say, hey, I want to open this credit card? Would you tell them, hey, let's stay away from that. Let's just kind of manage what you have?
Depends. If they have a very good credit score and they've got other cards, and they're using and paying in full every month, then there's no reason to open up more credit. If they have a house and they have, one installment loan, like a car payment, and then a couple credit cards, that's all they need to build good credit. I've actually seen some individuals with a credit score in the 700s, mid 700s, with no mortgage. So it just, it's important. More credit is not better. But if your focus is paying it off and paying it down, we put a plan in place to get that done while also investing. It isn't like one or the other. I am a proponent of doing both. You need that emergency fund to fall back on so that you don't have to pull out that 20% credit card when something bad happens and you need to put a new tire because it blew out, right? You need to have some cash in the bank. So it's a combination of both, and there's definitely a strategy and plan that we work on to attack both.
Yeah, I think it's good because, like you said, the mindset around money and being able to understand, and I think that's why a lot of us don't manage it well, simply because we just don't understand it. And I think you hit on the head when you said, because there's such all these different terms floating around where we're like super confused about it, and so we don't do well with it because we're just confused out here, and like, I don't know what to do with this. Like I said, we're just really trying to understand our 401ks,
Right. Well, that's very common. I mean, that's the vast majority of, what we see. Again, and this is one of the things I tell ladies, give yourself grace. Start there. Give yourself grace and realize that, it's okay. Your parents did as best as they could. They only taught you what they knew. And so there's no fault to them either. This is not about pointing fingers or finding fault in anybody. This is about, here we are today. What can we do to move forward? And just be kind to yourself. Give yourself that grace and know that, you will learn this. It will take some time to have these conversations and learn from whoever you want to choose to learn from. It's absolutely, positively, without question, very easily done. It's just finding that person that you feel comfortable with and working and learning. And it doesn't happen overnight. But, do it afraid.
Yeah. And I think that's the main piece, is like, you scared, but you got to do it anyway. You got to face your financial situation if you want to see it get better, which I mean, it's the same thing I have to do. I need to really sit down and look at, okay, even with my business, what's going out, what's coming in, what's being paid here, what's being paid there, because I feel like right now I don't have a good sense of that, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can be doing better than this. And I'm not afraid to tackle the question about money and stuff like that. But it does bother me when I feel like, okay, I should be better at this. And so I think that's where I beat myself up as, like, you should have paid more attention to this, Sean. You should.
Well, don't use the word should, because then that puts you in a position of like you're behind the 8 ball. And it's not that. Okay. It's not about shoulda, woulda, couldas, right? Yeah. It's about, okay, here we are today. What's my best interest and my company's best interest to do this moving forward? Maybe I take half a day and I just spend that buried in my books and understanding what's coming in, what's going out, get everything written down, put it in a binder, put it in a folder, put it whatever it is that works for you. And then get a handle on where you are today. And that in itself is going to be very empowering. You're going to feel like, okay, now I got it. Now I see where, here's some holes in it. I see a lot more going out in this area that shouldn't have to happen. Let me, slow that down a bit. Because we can't make any decisions until we know what's happening in our what it is that's happening in our finances. So there's no decision to be made
Yeah.
until you know.
Yeah. What tips or advice you can give someone to kind of get on that path to understanding their financials?
So, again, I would say seek out education, seek out the help of, a financial coach, whether it's me or anybody else. Get that help. It's an investment in yourself, and
Yeah.
The best investment you can make is in yourself, because no one can take that, that smarts away from you. Read books. The number of books that you can learn from are just countless. So find an author that you enjoy. Listen to podcasts by financial speakers, and just little by little take in that education, and try to just again, be kind with yourself. You're not going to become a master at managing your money in 2 months. There's a lot of moving parts to it. My program has 9 different areas of your life that you should focus on, and it's kind of an overview, comprehensive package. But again, it's find someone that you like and that you trust, and have a referral, have a conversation, and we're very intuitive as women. We have a very strong intuition if we can sit and just listen to it. So if something feels off for you by having a conversation with somebody, it's probably off, and you probably should just walk away and thank them. If it feels good, if it feels right, then explore that and potentially move forward. But again, try to stay offline. Online or stay off the mark. Yeah, the online, because it's just, there's some great information, but it's hard to filter it all. It's just overwhelming.
Yeah. It really is overwhelming. It's hard to decipher what's good and what's really and what's not. But I think it's good. I think I'm gonna do that today. I'm gonna sit down and I'm look at everything that I pay out, because I just started talking to my husband and my friends about, like, man, I really need to get a better handle on what I'm paying out when it comes to, a lot of times you sign up for stuff and you completely forget it, and then it hits your account and you're like, what is this? And so I need to go and make a list of everything that I'm paying out, or tools, services, whatever I'm using, to see, do I still need all of these? And so I could just get a better handle on what's going out and what I'm paying for. Because
if you find out that you're paying $200 a month for something that you don't need, that money can go back into your company or into a mutual fund, right?
Exactly.
To your box of chocolates.
Exactly. To my box of chocolates. I like it. So tell us about your program that you're offering, so my audience can know about it.
The program is called Minding Her Money, and you can go to Mind.
I like it.
Yeah, well, we are minding her money. So it, as I mentioned, incorporates 9 different areas. It really is a transformational program that will help ladies at the end of the day just get comfortable with managing their money. And I'm going to just, say that it helps them become a badass at being a money manager. And it's just, we talk about, the mechanics of the business or the program is, we talk about the money piece, as far as the money mindset. We talk about self-care. Those two are the kind of foundational. Getting organized, starting to get your papers together. We talk about getting your credit cleaned up or kept up if need be, buying a home on your own, dealing with the debt, dealing with spending, look at, the emotional spending that happens, and kind of take a deeper dive with that. We have 2 modules on investing. One is more simplistic and just a breakdown of the jargon in simple terms, so they have an understanding of what all these things mean. And then the other module is going a little bit deeper, where there's some tax strategies and some more things just to be aware of. And I make it very simple. I explain it very clearly, like I did the box of chocolates. So it makes it very simple to understand. And then the last component is living our ultimate legacy and retirement. So we can, even if you're in your 40s or 50s, you still want to think about what kind of legacy you want to leave and what that retirement looks like. So it's a combination of a digital course where they get to watch these videos and they have a lifetime access. And then we have weekly coaching calls for 90 days. And that's one awesome. That's one piece of it. And then you have the option of buying another program where it includes all that, but then you have 10 meetings with me one-on-one, and we dive deep into your personal situation.
Yeah, I like that. I really do. It works. We all need to be better with money. And minding her money is seriously the thing we should be doing. No, you're right. And this conversation has really kind of like just opened my mind up more and said, okay, I'm gonna really sit down and I'm really gonna get deep into it and really start looking at things. Like I said, just doing that one step will make me feel better. and then maybe comment on to a course like yours probably take me over the edge. It'll take me all the way over to freedom.
Yes, that's the freedom and peace of mind. That's the that's my ultimate goal for ladies. I don't want them to be having sleepless nights, wondering if they're going to run out of money, or if they're going to, it's just you don't want to sleep on your kid's couch, at retirement.
Yes.
So I get those fears. I understand the journey of being divorced and flying solo in life, and I've got some married women that come to me and say, well, does my program work for you or for me? And I'm like, yeah, it does. I mean, money smarts are money smarts. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
I just weave a lot of my journey with my divorce in the program. So I relate to that, to that world.
Yeah, you have a lot of experience in it. It's so funny. I was listening to, I don't know if it was a podcast, I was watching something on YouTube, and the guy has talked about how a lot of people are like, oh, I want more money, I want to do this, I want to bring in more money. And he said, God can't bless you with more money if you don't know how to manage the money you already have. So why would he bless you with all these millions just so you to kind of like squander it, right? Well, you have to learn, he said, you have to learn how to manage the money you have on the level that you're on before you can even be blessed with anything greater.
I agree 100%. And that's why you see a lot of the lotto winners, they come into these millions and the vast majority of them a year later or 2 years later are back to where they were. They just don't have that relationship with money. They don't understand the money. They don't have that proper education. So yeah, it's definitely and it's not just managing it; it's also being charitable and turning around and giving it back and not hoarding it.
Giving it back,
you know what?
Giving service.
It's money is energy, money is flow. It's like an ocean; it comes and goes, and there's enough of it for everybody, and there's an abundance of it out there. And if you just know that it's coming and going, and the more you give and the more you it just all flows. And I know that's a little woo-woo, but there's some science behind that.
I love that. I'm glad you said that. Before we end the show, which I don't want to end because I could talk to you forever. I ask this question to all of my guests that come on. What was some of the best advice you received from another woman? Just life. It comes to money. It can be life. Whatever advice you felt like was pivotal for you, that stood out for you.
I had a lot from my mom growing up that was good. I can't say there was any one particular comment, but just watching her, just her compassion and her huge heart, and just the way she loved deeply. So she would be my first and foremost hero. I think. It's interesting. I think it's probably more from female authors that I've learned from. I mean, there have been some wonderful women in my life for sure, but some of the transformational things I've read in books. There's a great book called How Women Rise, and it's I got certified as an executive coach through Marshall Goldsmith, and he wrote the book with a gal, Sally Helgeson, if I'm not beating up her name. And it's just about how women rise in life, not just in, corporate America. And that was a really great book. So, and of course, Brene Brown, all of her information is very powerful. So that's a long answer to your question, but there you go.
Listen, information is powerful. You can be inspired by so many people along your journey throughout life. I know I have, all different type of women. I even get inspired by the women I talk to, like you guys, every day, that kind of give me these tips and these things where just like, oh yeah, you could do that. So it's like, I love it. I love talking to women. I love hearing conversation. I love hearing the stories behind the brand and just understanding more about everyone that come on the show, because it does inspire me to be a better woman, to be a better person, and be a better service in this world. So thank you, Patti, for coming on the show.
Well, thank you, Shaunie. I appreciate being here. And, women rise with women, right? I mean, there's a saying that I'm going to completely butcher, but there's, the tides, we all rise together. And I think if we lift each other up, then
it's the way. It's the only way to do it.
That's a beautiful thing.
That's how I like it. All right, guys. I am Shaunie Sanders. This is the Girl Take No podcast, and we will talk to you next time.